In my opinion, this watch really flies under the radar. Now, I appreciate that that is an absolutely terrible pun for a pilot's watch. However, the Citizen Nighthawk BJ7138-04E is absolutely loaded with features and has this wonderful military aesthetic to it. But for some reason, this version compared to the older one really just doesn't get the attention that it deserves. I admit the older version of the Nighthawk has a bit more of a sort of iconic and cult status to it, but I feel like this one should really get a lot more attention. And in this video, we're going to chat through a few reasons why I think this. So why do I feel that this watch is so underrated? There's really three parts to that. The first one being the design and style. The Citizen Nighthawk really has its own design DNA. It is uniquely pilot, it's aviation, it's military. It's not doing the normal, it's a bit more of a conversational piece. It's not your everyday looking watch. Secondly is the functionality and features of this watch, and it is absolutely packed with them. This watch comes with its 200 meters water resistance. It has a rotating slide rule bezel, dual time, solar charging, lume for days, which I will show you later. It is just packed to the brim with features. And lastly is the price point. Now, at the time of filming, this watch was a little bit under $500, which I think for what you're getting is an incredibly fair price. Let's quickly touch on some of the specs of this watch. The Citizen Nighthawk has a 42mm two-tone stainless steel case, which feels plenty sturdy without weighing an absolute ton. It has a impact and shatter resistant mineral crystal. Personally, I would have probably preferred a sapphire crystal, but no complaints with this one so far. It has a water resistance of 200 meters or 20 bar or 666 feet, depending on your unit preference, which basically means that this watch is perfectly capable of swimming, showering, snorkeling, and all of the above. It comes with the Citizen Eco Drive B877 movement, which basically is powered by any light source. My only sort of caveat to that is I would say that the sun definitely charges this a lot quicker than your sort of indoor lights. In fact, when I first got this watch, it was essentially dead and required a bunch of charging, which definitely took a lot longer than I anticipated that it would have. But nevertheless, works fine and removes the need for sort of your watch batteries. Something that actually really caught me off guard with this watch, given the size of it, is the weight. It's only about 89 grams. Now, I assume this is probably largely to do with the Eco Drive movement inside of it, but it makes for a very comfortable wear. Speaking of comfortable wear, the watch comes standard on this green leather strap, which I have zero complaints about. I found it to be very comfortable. It looks great. Comes with a very sizable Citizen sort of stainless steel buckle. But yeah, I think a lot of the overall aesthetic that I really like about this watch also kind of has to do with the strap. I think it just works really well with the black, yellow, and green. I think the yellow stitching is a nice touch that really ties to the face of the watch. Moving on to what I really consider to be the star of the show with this watch, and that is the dial. This watch dial is so obnoxiously complicated, and I absolutely love it for that exact reason. It is very reminiscent of an aircraft cockpit, and what's kind of interesting is that when you immediately think of a pilot's watch, you tend to think of an airplane. However, in a lot of the sort of promotion around this watch, they seem to lean more into the sort of helicopter pilot aesthetic, which I thought was an interesting little take and a fun little factoid for you. So, breaking down this dial, you've basically got your three hands, your second, minute, and hour. You have these really nifty little dual time zone tracker on the left-hand side of the watch, and these white and yellow rings. So you have the dual hands. The yellow one represents the PM time, and the white one represents the AM. And they have these very cool, as you can just about see them, these little airplane tips, which I really, really enjoy. The dial also features a little date window at the 3 o'clock position. To be honest, I found it a little bit hard to read, especially at a glance. I don't know whether it's because they've set the little date window too deep within the dial, or maybe I'm just getting old and I can't read properly, but it can be a little bit challenging to read, especially when the date is in double digits. As I mentioned earlier, this watch dial is incredibly complicated to look at, and that is largely owing to this rotating slide rule bezel. For those of you that don't know, this is essentially an old school pilot tool that they would use for calculations and conversions. So it would help them with things like navigation, determining speed, flying distance, fuel consumption, how many flying hours they have left. You can also do conversions, for example, from metric to imperial. You can do general calculations such as multiplication, division, square roots, and so on. Now, I'm the first to admit, math isn't my strong point, and I haven't quite wrapped my head around all of the features entirely and how it works, but there is a ton of tutorials online that you can go and watch and understand and learn how this works. Let's move on to the piece that we all know and love, and that is the lume. Citizen is really renowned for their lume, and this watch is really no exception to that rule. I'm going to give it a quick blast of UV and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. As you can see, this watch has absolutely no shortage of lume. It is incredibly visible and legible in low light conditions, and the lume really does last for hours. The one thing I feel that it could have had is maybe a little lume pip on the second hand. I think, again, personal preference, but I think that would have been a nice touch. The dual time zone hands also don't have any lume, but given the size of them, I think that's a pretty understandable decision that they made. I also happen to really love the blue. I think it's a nice little change from your sort of traditional green sort of color that we see on other watches. Yeah, definitely no slouch when it comes to lume. In terms of wearability, I found this watch to be incredibly comfortable. I think largely owing to this really awesome stock leather strap that it comes with. I would also add that if the green and the leather isn't really your thing, it is kind of that generic 22mm size that makes it a real sort of strap monster if you wanted to change it out. Pretty easy to do. I would say it definitely fills the wrist, but without really weighing your whole wrist down as you walk. Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is that the slide rule bezel is definitely not super easy to use when you're wearing it, but I can definitely forgive it for that. Overall, I would say it looks good dressed up, dressed down, however you want to wear it. I think it's a pretty damn comfortable watch. Wrapping things up with the Citizen Nighthawk, I would say this is definitely a watch that you shouldn't let fly under your radar. It truly has one of the most unique aesthetics and styles. It has more features and functionality than you could ever want, and at the price point, it's really a great value option. Also, this watch was actually discontinued, well, at least this version was discontinued quite some time ago. So whilst there's definitely a fair few of them still around at the moment, I don't know what that means for sort of future availability. I have 1000% enjoyed my time with this watch since I bought it, and if you happen to really like what this watch is putting down, I would definitely consider grabbing one. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and may the hours and days ahead be kind.